What's up, people? Sorry about yesterday. I dozed off. Stayed up really late yesterday. So, I'm gonna save Moonraker for next week, or if I decide maybe we'll do it on the weekend, I'll see how it goes. But today, I'm doing my Marvel pitch part 2 because I just feel like Marvel has so much untapped potential, but it's with Disney. And they want to play it this safe game, like I mentioned in the last video. So, where I think we can start, I guess, before we get into that, tomorrow, I cannot wait for this Mad Max review. I haven't watched Mad Max in a long fucking time, so I can't wait to finally dive right back into it. So I'll be doing that tomorrow, and then we'll be starting the Mel. I'm only doing the Mel Gibson ones. Maybe I guess, not gonna rewatch it, but maybe I'll give like quick thoughts on Furiosa, because that's what it fucking was. Let's be real. Maybe in the video tomorrow, but overall, Mad Max I can't wait to dive back into it. So, but yeah, but I just feel like Marvel has so much untapped potential, and they just want to just waste it. So we're kind of continuing on, and I want to go in a bit more detail because I kind of was not vague, but I just kind of said, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," but I want to go more into it. So. So I kind of want to kick off with my Spider-Man idea. So the idea is do it like the PS4 game, kind of like I mentioned in the first video, but I want to almost go it like kind of how the Spider-Man the animated series did it, where we have our established Spider-Man. I want this to be like a year, maybe year 3 or 4 Spider-Man, like he's been doing it for a bit, because I want to move away from kid Spider-Man. Because I've always said this. Teen Spider-Man in high school is not even his best fucking. A lot of his best stories are when he's in college. So I feel like that's the better age or close to an adult. I just think it's time. We got to get out of fucking high school. Because that's not even where his best stuff is. I want to bring in villains, ideally. Like, we'll probably do a trilogy, but if we're going to do crossovers, but ideally I want to do a trilogy, right? And maybe we start off with the first movie, we do Kraven the Hunter. Because I feel like he's a villain that's almost we've never seen in a movie. We need to, if we do Green Goblin, I'll do him in like 2 or 3. Because I think we need to not I want to stray away from villains we've already done, unless they were done like shit, like Vulture. Like, I like Michael Keaton, but he was not the comic character. So I'd rather have a comic. I didn't like the whole armored look. I thought it was, I understand somewhat why they did that. It's modern, but I prefer the wing. You could have did metal wings and not make it look like armor. I kind of liked how granted we only saw the wings, but we got a teaser for what it was gonna look like in Spider-Man, like the original Spider-Man 4, and that would have been fine. But the ones in the movie looked too, like the ones in Homecoming were like fucking huge. I want to stray away from that. So yeah, we do like in the first movie we do Kraven the Hunter. I kind of want to just have him be the villain solely, because I honestly think Spider-Man versus Kraven is a solid movie right there. That he's a good villain you can kind of kick off Spider-Man with. He's Spider-Man's first challenge. Um, you keep also the big thing with a lot of these movies. I want to keep them like how the comics did them. Like when they're in their own stories, like in the comics, they're their own stories. They're not like, oh, we gotta constantly have fucking, you know, fucking mentions and tie-in. We don't always have to do that. The comics didn't do that. Like with Marvel, like Spider-Man was doing it. Granted, he's always kind of his own thing, but even like the X-Men or even like the Avengers, when Captain America was in a Captain America story, it was a Captain America story or Iron Man or whatever. You kind That's kind of what we need to do, and this is with both companies. You can have little mentions here that, like, maybe one scene Spider-Man swing, like in the PS4 game. and you see the Fantastic Four tower, right? But I feel like we need to keep them in their own stories. When it's time to come together, okay, do that. But we need to keep it like that's one thing I liked about whatever people had problems I had with people had this. I know it's DC, but having some of the early DCU, at least they were kind of like when it was a solo story, it was a solo story. Or even like early Phase One Marvel, it was a solo story. You know, you could have your little tie-ins here and there every now and then. I'm not saying every now and then you can't have like maybe the Avengers on like a newspaper or on the news or something, but it needs to like a Spider-Man story should be a Spider-Man story. So Spider-Man, like I said in the last Marvel movie pitch, is he needs to be the character you build around because he is what carried Marvel really in the 90s. I mean, honestly, all the decades for being honest here. Like Spider-Man is a character like I love Batman, but he's arguably bigger than Batman slightly in terms of popularity. And I think you got to build it around him. You know, I know they did it around Tony last time, but Spider-Man is the character you need to build it around. And then we move on to the X-Men and how I said this, and I probably should have went into more detail. I want to do it like the 90s. Granted, we're not doing Wolverine in the costume. This is an unpopular opinion, but I've never been a big fan of Wolverine in the mask. So we're not doing the mask, but we'll do the costume. But I want to do it like the 90s. Like X-Men should kind of be a period piece. Same with Fantastic Four, but I'd already say Fantastic Four. I know this has been one. This is an original idea. I've seen people pitch this a lot, and I kind of agree with it. You start off with Fantastic Four in the 60s, then you bring them into current day. In my version of this world, I kind of want it to be timeless. So almost like you don't necessarily... Well, maybe certain characters, like X-Men, I want it to feel like the 90s X-Men, right? We bring in, like, for example, right? Like, we're doing the Sentinel. We're not doing the... Rewatched X2 the other day. I love that movie. And I mostly like the X-Men, the Fox X movies, especially the early ones, -3. I'm not a big fan, especially in rewatch. I'm not a fan of the whole Wolverine Jean thing. We need to not do that. And the way they portrayed Cyclops. I'm not a I never was a big Cyclops fan. He was cool, but I was always more of a Wolverine guy. But I do feel like I can't not point it out. He felt like he was kind of he was just there. So in these movies, we need to make him like matter and kind of put him in an actual suit. I like Cyclops's classic suit from the 90s, like the blue and then like the big yellow boots. It works for him, you know. And I think we need to get into that. If we're gonna do the Sentinels, do them right, have them look cool. Like I like Days of Future Past, but I'm not a big. We need to kind of lean into the more comic booky stuff, and this is for the MCU too. Like tone wise, X-Men needs to be serious. Like certain characters you can have be a bit more comic, comedy, but X-Men needs to relatively be serious. For Professor X, he needs to be a serious character, and the mutant story needs to be like the one thing I think those Fox X-Men movies captured was the mutant uh like the mutant story, like the whole mutant I guess you want to say oppression is a perfect word. I was thinking of it. Mutant oppression. They caught it perfectly. You know, I have some criticism with those movies, but though that is a big one, I think they caught perfectly in the tone. And then moving to other characters, I kind of want to keep it straight. Like eventually, certain characters, yeah, you got to make it big scale. Like the Hulk, it has to be large scale. He's a massive character, and I'm actually going to get to him in a second. But with the street level characters, I want to focus on characters like Iron Fist, but actually do them in the costume. We're doing costumes in my Marvel movie. In DC, same thing. This weird version of costumes now, or just either a version of costumes, or just like how they did in fucking Iron Fist. He just had a hoodie. Like, sorry about that. I just need a drink. But you needed it, like, you just put him in a fucking hoodie. Like, Iron Fist's costume relatively could work in a movie. Maybe you modernize it a bit. Maybe you I know a lot of people don't like the whole textured suit thing, but that could work. I think that works pending on what the suit is, but I can accept that. But you got to make it look at least somewhat like a comic book costume, And I think that's what they need to lean into, and do characters like Daredevil. I'd actually go full on movie. Like we've already done the show, so I was like, you don't want to just do another show. So what I would do is lean into like with Daredevil, do movies, do a trilogy of movies, and then you do a tie-in with Spider-Man because he's a character you could tie in with Spider-Man. If you want to make Daredevil PG-13, that's how you do it. If you want to do a Daredevil Spider-Man movie, okay, there you can make it PG-13 because he's with Spider-Man. And when he's with Spider-Man, he's probably not going to be in like only Hell's Kitchen. So okay, cool. But if you're doing Daredevil by himself, it needs to be an R-rated movie. And Punisher, we're going all in with him. He's one of my favorite characters, and I just feel like they've done nothing with him, at least since the show. And I have my problems with the show, but that was like the last thing we kind of got of that character, and then so I want to bring him back in a big way. I just think now to the Hulk. We do a trilogy of Hulk movies, and we look at that internal conflict. Get a really good actor to play him and portray Bruce Banner, and you could do both Bruce Banner and the Hulk. Get good CGI, bring in villains like Abomination, and then maybe Hulk 3 or whatever you want to call it. That could be World War Hulk. Because that's one people have been wanting adapted, so like we can do that right. And also with me, I wanted to lean. I'm not saying it needs to be a 101, but I needed something close to the comics. I'm done with this. Like, we're gonna change the backstory. Maybe the second Hulk movie or the third one, you could bring in She-Hulk and actually do an actual good She-Hulk. By the way. And then eventually, if you want, you could do her own series. But for me, I want to stick with movies because the MCU, whatever problems I had with it, even with some of the, ones really around Phase 3 is when I kind of tuned out. I gotta say, one thing that I think kept people was the movies. Making a bunch of separate series that tie in just don't work. Because even you gotta lie to the audience to say, like, oh, this shit matters when it really doesn't. Because Kevin Feige lied to people when he said, oh, the shows matter. No, they don't. You can fucking skip them. Because the movies, from people who've actually watched, like, every Marvel movie that I've seen review them, always say, the shows don't matter. The movies don't even reference them half the fucking time. Like, WandaVision with Doctor Strange. Fucking Sam Raimi didn't even watch WandaVision. That's the other problem. Like, you gotta stick with just movies. And if you're gonna do shows, for me, I wanted the shows almost kind of like how DC does it. Where the shows are the shows, the movies are the movie. Like, I kind of want to do that. I think it's just easier that way. Like, if we do an animated Marvel show or even a live action one, I want it to just kind of be in its own little universe. Okay, so we do a live action like a live action. I think a Spider-Man show could work if you get decent effects. Yeah, that could work, but it's not tied with the MCU. It's its own Spider-Man show. I kind of want to do that. Another character I kind of really want to bring in is with the X-Men. I guess I'm gonna go back with the X-Men. We need to bring in characters that I feel like have been strongly left out of the movies, like the Marauders. They were a great group of bad guys, never even brought in the movies. You have Psylocke, who somewhat was in the movies and technically and was in Apocalypse, but she was wasted. She was in The Last Stand, who she didn't even look like the character. Psylocke is like one of the greatest men. Like a lot of people, that's a lot of people's. Some people's favorite female X-Men. For me, it's Storm, because I think ultimately the longevity. That's the other one. We haven't really had a great Storm. I'm cool with Halle Berry, but she's honestly, I really only like her in the first two movies, and then kinda in Days of Future Past. But every other one, she's just kinda there. And then I didn't really care for the newer Storm we got in like Apocalypse in the later movies. So I just feel like we need to focus on Storm, trying to make her a big member. I'm honestly not touching Order of the Phoenix or the Phoenix. Sorry, I'm thinking Harry Potter. The Phoenix Saga. I'm not touching that. Like that's been adapted too many times. Gotta kind of do Age of Apocalypse right. and have an Apocalypse that actually looks like the character. That could be a good, like, if you want to end like the X-Men story, that's how you do it. And then maybe you do kind of what they did with Wolverine eventually, just do solo movies with him by himself, or maybe pair up movies. Do a Wolverine and Spider-Man team up, because they team up all the time, so that'd be cool. Or Wolverine versus Hulk. That could be a good movie just for the fuck of it. You know? I just think we need to, and with Iron Man, what I would do, kind of like we need to do, I think the Iron Man 3, but a little bit on steroids, at the whole exploring his alcoholism, because that's like one of the biggest arcs of Tony in the comics. In the movies, kind of explore, really only 3 does, but I think we'd explore it more. And with Captain America, I do a Captain Wolverine movie, maybe set during World War II, because now we're not tied with the whole, Fox and all that merger. This is just an idealized world. You can have them team up. You can do a Wolverine team up movie. That would be cool. A Wolverine team up with Cap. Like, we need to start exploring just ideas like that, just out there ideas. Eventually touch the cosmic characters like the Nova Corps. Yeah, I'd leave the Guardians alone, because especially just the tone has been done to death. But like, yeah, the Nova Corps. No, yeah, like that could be a cool group that they've never really brought in the movies. It's like Marvel's Green Lantern, in a sense. Do a darker Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange is pretty dark in the comics. Like, he's a bit darker. He's not like dark, but he's pretty dark. Like, he's out there. Arguably, there's some stories where you can make an R-rated Doctor Strange movie. And that's the other thing. Certain characters, they will have their tones. Like, Spider-Man would keep in this PG-13. X-Men, relatively PG-13, but like, if you do Age of Apocalypse, you could make that R-rated. You kind of could make that R-rated. If we do like Daredevil and Punisher, that's always going to be R-rated, unless they're like a team-up thing, then maybe. But arguably, that's the only time I'd make that exception, but we keep them R-rated. Fantastic Four, we do the characters right. Specifically Doctor Doom. He's another villain that I just think he's unexplored. Because unfortunately, I was fine with him in the 2005 movie, like the first one. And then he was dog shit in the second one, and they really fucked him up in Fan Four Stick. He looked more like almost borderline. Like, I think I saw a fan edit of like a What If Man of Steel 2. That wasn't BBS. And they used the Doom from that movie, and they just repurposed it and made him Metallo. Because that's kind of what he looked like. Like, the green on his face could just be kryptonite. It's like, yeah. But they should just... But that's kind of what I want to go for. Like, we bring in a good Doctor Doom, a good Magneto. I want good villains, and don't just kill them off. I think what I would try to do is kind of how the comics do it. The comics don't just kill every villain, unless it's like Punisher or something. But largely, they just beat them, and then either they go to jail, or they get locked in some weird Phantom Zone. It's DC, but some weird, like, kind of, but somewhat that concept. Like, they're locked outside, or they're not dead, but there's a way you could bring them back, but they're defeated. I think we kind of need to go back to that. You can't just kill every fucking villain, So, like, Red Skull, you shouldn't have killed him off. He's another villain. He could be a reoccurring Cap villain, So, yeah, this is kind of what I got so far. There's probably gonna be a part 3, but I want to do a DC pitch part 2 first. But yeah, I definitely want to keep doing these, because I just think these companies, both of them, have so much potential, and they just waste it because they either want to, swap them in some way, or swap them, even just changing their fucking story, like they did with She-Hulk, to where it's not even recognizable. But like, what's the point? Like, that's why, like, it kind of goes back to my original why I'm done with comic books video. They just not even adapting the characters. So I kind of just want to pitch what I would do with these characters, because I think all of them you could do something with. If you actually did a Spider-Man that was street level, then maybe like the last few films, and maybe some of the team-ups, fine. You can team them up with like the Fantastic Four or something, and maybe that's a bit bigger scale. But Spider-Man needs to be in his own stories a street level villain. He's not doing world ending shit. That's the other thing. We're not doing always. Not everything's gonna be a world end scenario. We kind of need a. That's become kind of monotonous or end of multiverses now. But yeah, I just kind of want to stick with just ending with. Sometimes just a villain has a personal goal that's not necessarily ending the world. You can do that. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to kind of give my quick thoughts because I just, this company, specifically Marvel, has so many good characters and they're just not using them. So I just wanted to give my quick thoughts. Tomorrow, Mad Max, one of Mel's best, one of my favorite post-apocalyptic movies, and just the aesthetic of it. And I understand why a lot of people love it. Like, this movie has a big fan base. Like, I love this movie, but it's not like my IP like that, right? But I can definitely understand why it's for some. So I can't wait to dive back into it. I'll be watching that tomorrow. And then Friday, I know it's gonna be a weird one to review right after watching Mad Max, Little Mermaid, the original. So we'll be doing that since I'm gonna be roasting the dog shit new one that's coming out. So anyway, cheers, and I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. But yeah, guys,